Daniel E. Sickles, one of my personal favorites. One of Lincoln's Union Democrat generals, whom he couldn't fire, and a complete incompetent. He's the man who, on the second day of Gettysburg, takes his corps off of Missionary Ridge and plunges it into the Devil's Den and the Peach Orchard. He loses a leg. One of his subordinates says, the loss of his leg was a gain to us regardless of what it was to him. And he shows up in the 1896 campaign as a Democrat endorsing McKinley. He's a Union veteran, and he's a member of what is called by the campaign the Heroic Battalion. 40 Union generals, mostly generals, led by Russell Alger, the former governor of Michigan, a cavalryman, led the 1st Michigan Cavalry under George Armstrong Custer at Gettysburg. And Sickles shows up to endorse McKinley and campaigns for about 8 weeks with Russell through the Midwest, and he's very funny. He's hilarious. He only got one leg, obviously. He says, I'd like to kick Bryan in my posterior, but I'll need a little help. And 13,000 people stood up and began mimicking kicking Bryan with their leg. And he's very funny. He's got a continual, you read his speeches, they're just, I couldn't put them in there because there were so many good ones, but they're just very funny. Trust me on this. He'd been elected as an assemblyman to the New York General Assembly in the early 1850s and immediately created controversy by bringing a well-known prostitute onto the floor of the New York General Assembly, where she saw some of her clients. Came to Washington after some diplomatic postings as a Democratic congressman from New York, and immediately began indulging in the great things available in Washington of the female persuasion, and got a very bad reputation. And somebody said to him, you got to get married, or otherwise you're going to be in political trouble. So he got married to a 16-year-old who apparently was unbelievably attractive. But it didn't stop him from continuing to have affairs. So she retaliated by taking a lover of her own. And he found out about it, found out where they were meeting, and broke in on them in the act and shot her lover dead. The U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Francis Scott Key, Jr., and got off by the very successful use of for the first time in America, of temporary insanity. And in 1896, he's campaigning for McKinley with great effect throughout the North. Anyway, it's a weird, yes, they were more honest than they were back then.